Hello everyone, this is Pooka and welcome to another Pokemon TCG video. Got another new deck for you today. Now, when XY Flashfire came out, we had a Charizard deck and we had a Pyroar deck. But what if we combine them together? And that's what we're going to try out today. So let's just take a look at this deck. Of course, we're going to take a look at the major players first and then go over why this deck might be a good idea. So first we have Charizard. A lot of people know what this does by now. It's the big EX from this set. Combustion Blast is the big attack. 150 for 4 energy, and then you can't use Combustion Blast during your next turn. Alright, so obviously this is a very expensive attack, but we can actually power it up in one turn under the right circumstances. We can do that through Blacksmith. Take 2 fire energy from the discard and attach it to one of your fire Pokemon. So we get 2 fire onto Charizard that way, and then just use a double colorless energy to provide the 2 colorless cost right here, and then all of a sudden, instant 150 damage. Pretty darn good, if you ask me. So we have different options in this deck. Number 1 is to attack with Charizard using Combustion Blast, and just doing big bursts of damage at once. We can also aid this through Muscle Band, which would make this do 170 damage, knocking out most popular Pokemon EX. Or if that weren't enough, we're also going to run Burbank City Gym alongside Hypnotoxic Laser. This way we can knock out those 180 HP Pokemon EX as well, like those pesky Darkrai EX and things like that, or heck, even other Charizard EX. That works too. So we have Burbank, Laser, Muscle Band, all sorts of things to make sure we get those one-hit knockouts. That's the important thing. So we have an option to be aggressive with Charizard. But we have another option here with Pyroar to kind of slow the game down if we want to go that route. So Pyroar has Intimidating Mane, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's basic Pokemon. This was the most hyped card coming into this set, I think, and for good reason. That ability is very, very strong. Unfortunately, it hasn't really found a home quite yet, so we're trying to find a good partner for Pyroar since it doesn't seem like it can do it by itself. So we're going to try out a 3-3 line of Pyroar alongside 3 Charizard EX and see how that works. Now, the Singapore National Championships actually happened this past weekend, and there were rumors that a Charizard Pyroar deck actually was the winner. Nobody saw the deck. There's no deck list or anything like that, but we have heard that Charizard Pyroar indeed was the winning deck, so it's probably worth trying out. Now, the way I'm going to go about this is to run Ninetales alongside this. So Ninetales has the cool ability Bright Look. When you play it down, it's basically a Pokemon catcher. You get to drag something off of the bench and bring it active. So the idea here is a lot of decks are actually very bad against Pyroar. Think about like Team Plasma decks, or anything like that. Like even Yveltal EX decks sometimes don't run evolutions. We've seen the Yveltal Garbodor deck become more popular recently, but that's mainly because of Pyroar, just to shut it off. If there are decks that just don't run evolutions, they are stopped cold by Pyroar. So the idea here is a lot of decks are just going to be running a small line to try to beat Pyroar. Even in those Yveltal Garbodor decks, it's usually just a 2-2 line. So what we're going to try to do is use Ninetales to Bright Look those little evolution lines and knock them out before they can get a chance to knock out our own Pyroar. That way, they don't have their evolutions. Well, Pyroar is free to reign, right? What can stop him once their evolutions go down? A very common card recently has been Raichu to kind of counter both Yveltal EX and Lugia EX while also being able to attack Pyroar. And Ninetales is great for bringing out that Raichu before it can really set up. So Bright Look is a very great asset in this deck. But we also have the attack Hexed Flame, which is very good as well. Does 20 plus 50 for each special condition affecting the defending Pokemon. So with Hypnotoxic Laser, we can automatically do 70 damage even if we flip tails, or 120 damage if we flip heads, and then we have Burbank City Gym, So with the poison and the Verbank, that adds up to 150 damage if we flip heads, and then 170 with a Muscle Band. So Ninetales is actually a pretty solid attacker in itself. We're already running fire energy, so hey, we get the bright look, and we also get an additional attacker. Why not? So that's the basic strategy of this deck. Against decks that have a lot of evolutions, we would focus more on Charizard. Against decks that rely on those slim evolution lines to try to beat Pyroar, we will try to use Pyroar instead. Just a big old fire deck, that's what we got here. Now, we also have a couple Jirachi EX. I know this is a card that's not extremely popular with a lot of people because it's a 90 HP Pokemon EX, gives up 2 prizes. But Jirachi is super good with cards like Blacksmith. You usually can't search for them, right? Because if you play something like a Skyla, for example, you search your deck for the Blacksmith, you can't play it in the same turn. However, if you have, say, an Ultra Ball or a Level Ball, that can turn directly into a Blacksmith, or even better sometimes, a Lysander. So Jirachi EX is very, very good in this deck. The 2 prize drawback definitely hurts sometimes, but being able to search out these cards is fantastic. So that's our basic strategy of the deck. We've looked at just about everything here. We can go over some other supporters as well. We just have 4N, 4 Professor Juniper, 2 Skyla, 2 Chorus, and then of course we've seen the Blacksmith and Lysander already. We have a couple switching cards just because we need to get out of the active sometimes, and one of the ways our opponent will try to beat Pyroar is through Hypnotoxic Laser, trying to poison it, so sometimes we just need a switch to get out of that. We also have a Startling Megaphone. This is mostly used against Garbodor decks, so we can get a turn to Bright Look it in the active spot and knock it out. It's pretty good. Professor's Letter just searches for fire energy, has some good synergy with Ultra Ball. When you have a Professor's Letter and an Ultra Ball, you can turn into an instant Blacksmith by searching for Jirachi EX, and you get the 2 fire in the discard thanks to Ultra Ball. So pretty neat combo there. And then our ace spec for the deck is just Dowsing Machine. This has become a very standard ace spec in most decks at this point. Gets back an item card from the discard pile when you discard 2 cards. And then we have 8 fire energy, 4 double colorless energy, and that is our deck. Now, sorry, I took a pretty long time explaining this, but it is a fairly complex idea. Just have to kind of explain why everything is here. So let's take a look at this deck in action. We got a game on Pokemon TCG Online, and we'll see if this deck can actually work, because this is a fairly untested idea. I mean, yes, it did win in Singapore, but we don't really know what was in that deck list, and we don't know if that was a fluke or what the case was. So it'll be interesting to see, is this deck the real deal? Is there a better way to build it? I don't know. We'll try to find out. So we see an Yveltal in my opponent's active spot, and we're probably going to assume that's some kind of Yveltal EX deck. We don't really see the regular Yveltal without the EX behind it, but we shall see. So the Darkness Energy going on to the active Yveltal, and we'll see there is indeed a Hypnotoxic Laser putting my poor Charizard to sleep, but hey, we did get... my opponent did play an N there, so that was very, very good for me. And I'm going to get a fresh hand of 6 because my other hand was absolutely garbage. But now we got some stuff to work with. Alright, so here I see an Yveltal EX deck. And automatically I know Pyroar is going to be very good against this kind of a deck. Sure, they'll probably have something to deal with it. Maybe Raichu, maybe Garbodor, something else I don't know of. But no matter what that is, my strategy against this kind of deck will be go for Pyroar. We know that this is a deck that is generally vulnerable to Pyroar, so we'll go ahead and try to focus on that in this game. And we'll just kind of leave Charizard out there to, be a sacrifice for now. So we see Random Receiver into another N, and that's going to give both of us another fresh hand of 6, and we just see the Oblivion Wing for 30, and then no energy goes on to the bench. Alright, so here we have an interesting situation, I would say. Alright, so I do have a switch I could play in this kind of a situation, but I feel like those are best reserved for when Pyroar is poisoned by Hypnotoxic Laser. So I'm actually going to consider just attaching to Charizard and retreating in this kind of a spot, so I don't have to waste a switch. This might be being overly cautious, but it seems like it might be okay here. I'm going to go ahead and retreat into the Pyroar. I'm trying to decide if I want to play an N or not. Basically, I'm just trying to get in position here. If my opponent does bench a Trubbish or a Pikachu or something like that, I want to be able to knock it out immediately. Right? I want to be able to slam down a Ninetales, Bright Look, and then knock out whatever comes down. So let's see what's going to happen here. We did poison the Yveltal. That's great. We do know that there is no immediate threat to Pyroar. That's the cool thing here. Nothing can just come down and knock out Pyroar. It's all basics. Evolutions take a turn to evolve. There are some cards that have, nifty effects like Rayquaza's Shred or Giratina EX's Shred, Cobalion EX's Steel Bullet, things like that, Latias EX. Those are all things that can bust through that ability, but those are not things that can be powered up in one turn, so we are not worried about those, and they don't take dark energy either. So nothing to really worry about. Now we do see a Lysander from my opponent, and it's going to bring out Charizard once again, and that's pretty annoying, but we'll see what we can do about it. There is a Junk Hunt for a Hypnotoxic Laser and a Random Receiver. I do draw an N, which I'll probably play this turn. Go ahead and level ball for another Litleo. Looks like we have our third Litleo prize, but 2 Pyroar probably gets the job done in this situation. And yeah, I'm just going to go with an N here, and oh, no energy. That's a brutal turn. I'm just going to have to pass, and we're being a little slow here, but that happens sometimes with every deck. Kind of unfortunate we didn't get an energy attachment there. I really wish I would have gotten at least a fire, started to power up that Pyroar, but nope, just wasn't meant to be. And there we see the Pyroar counter my opponent has, Pikachu. Well, not the Pikachu. The Raichu is the scary one. It has Circle Circuit, does 20 times the number of your benched Pokemon, and then with a Muscle Band or a Hypnotoxic Laser, it can hit for enough to knock out Pyroar in one hit, so we're going to have to worry about that. That's going to be our main goal at this point. Take out that Pikachu or Raichu if it turns into that. Otherwise, we may be in some trouble. Because, my strategy at this point is I have basically given up on Charizard. I'm saying, you know what, this is not worth it. Yveltal EX is going to be too good against Charizard in this situation. Pyroar is going to be good in this situation. So let's just go with Pyroar. Why not? Alright, so here I'm going to go ahead and play a Skyla, which will get me Professor's Letter. This will just make sure I get energy attachments. I get to power up my Pyroar, and we'll get everything going. And start attacking with Scorching Fang. So let's just go ahead, attach Fire to the Pyroar on the bench, and I don't even want to put another Charizard in play. I don't want another target for my opponent to bring out with a Lysander or something like that. I just want Pyroar, and then I'm okay with like a Ninetales line since it only gives up 1 prize. But if I bench another Charizard, that puts me in a potentially bad position. So I'm not even going to bother putting down another Charizard. You want to make sure you don't give your opponent too many targets to go after besides Pyroar, especially in a deck like this that has Dowsing Machine, and then Sableye can Junk Hunt for that Dowsing Machine, and it's just not pretty. You're going to get stuff picked off eventually. So here we see a Muscle Band go onto the Pikachu, and then a Chorus. Now my Charizard is done for. It is absolutely knocked out. Nothing we can do about that. He is a gunner. He is poisoned. 30 HP left of Burbank out there. He's gone. But I'm okay with that, right? We knew he was going to be a sacrifice, and it actually might even help because it'll allow me to put Pyroar out there without having to burn a switch or a double colorless or something like that. Alright, so here we see a second Pikachu coming down. So my opponent's being very smart about this, knowing, alright, I need to get these out. One could get picked off by Ninetales Bright Look or by Lysander. And if that happens, I just don't really have the opportunity to knock out Pyroar. So That's what we got to do. Alright, so here we see Sableye doing the most intimidating thing in the game, the most powerful thing in the game. Junk Hunt for a knock. Oh, sorry, Junk Hunt for a knockout. It was so powerful I choked. Get back 2 item cards, and then your opponent's Pokemon is knocked out. That is the most broken thing in the world. Alright, so here we have the third energy going on to Pyroar. We can begin to attack. I'm going to Ultra Ball for that Ninetales. And alright, here we go. We can go ahead and bring out that Pikachu before it evolves, before we have a chance to even get knocked out by a Raichu. We did get a second Pyroar into play as well. Have a startling Megaphone. No point in really playing that right here. And we can Scorching Fang. Do not have to discard for the knockout. And we take down that first Pikachu. It's just a question, will a Raichu number 2 come out and then knock out Pyroar? And how many of these Raichu do I have to deal with? Normally it's just a 2-2 line. We can't see people really fitting more than that. But I don't know, we'll have to see. If we do see a heavier line, this may be more difficult. But again, we're kind of playing off the fact that most of these decks, these basic centric decks, only are going to run like a 2-2 line of an evolution to try to beat Pyroar. And we're going to try to say, no, that's not enough to beat Pyroar. It's just, we're going to find a way to beat those kinds of decks, and then Pyroar will just win by itself, since you can't hurt it anymore. Now it looks like we do see a Dowsing Machine again, and that's going to be pretty intimidating. I'm not really sure what that's going to go for, but realistically here I'm trying to think, what do we have to deal with to win at this point? We do see a Colress coming back, so it looks like my opponent doesn't have much to work with in hand. So I'm thinking I'm going to have to deal with one more Raichu. And I don't have another Ninetales ready. I don't have much of anything really ready. So what am I going to do? I don't know. I mean, if the Raichu comes out, we actually could return Knockout right now. We have a Blacksmith. We have a Laser and a Fire Energy. We could just Hex Flame, knock out Raichu that way. But after that Raichu, I'm trying to think, what do I have to deal with? Is it just this Sableye? And if it is, then our strategy works. That's pretty much game over. And that's actually pretty impressive when you think about it. We just have to knock out like 2 or 3 Pokemon, and then our opponent has no way to win. That is why people thought Pyroar was so powerful. Alright, so I'm going to retreat to Ninetales here. Just take this opportunity to do that. We're going to Blacksmith onto the benched Pyroar with no damage on it, and then attach to the active Hypnotoxic Laser, that Sableye, and then Hex Flame for 120 damage. Now I do have a Dowsing Machine in hand. I'm kind of waiting to play that. I don't really know what I want to do with that yet. There's no instant need for a supporter, so we'll just hold back on that right now. And now it'll be interesting to see what will my opponent follow up with here. Now anything can knock out this Ninetales. That's not protected. Darkrai can come out in Night Spear, Yveltal can Evil Ball, whatever. I don't really mind that. But will we get an opportunity to knock out that Raichu on the bench? That's, I don't know, that's going to be a pretty big deal. It's just, what's going to happen first? Will Pyroar get to Raichu first, or will Raichu get to a Pyroar first? And even if it does get to a Pyroar, I mean, I have a second one waiting. And then we can get a third one out since I have that other Litleo in my hand. So this is looking pretty favorable for me. And then, oh wow, we do see the Lysander, and looks like Raichu definitely is getting to Pyroar first. And there we see the Circle Circuit with the Laser after another Lysander. And that's not good news, but hey, now we just knock out Raichu, and what does my opponent have left? All basic Pokemon, and that's not going to be enough to take down Pyroar. Now, we do have Hypnotoxic Laser to deal with. There are 3 of those gone, though. So we realistically only have to dodge 1 more Laser, and then a Dowsing Machine, and then we can end up winning. Now, I'm trying to figure out what do I want to attack with here. If I send out Pyroar, I can Scorching Fang and get a knockout that way. Or I may just want to use Ninetales like a Dowsing Machine for the Hypnotoxic Laser and knock out Raichu that way. But I'm just going to go with the Scorching Fang. It's unfortunate that I have to discard an energy here. I would be very vulnerable to an Enhanced Hammer in this situation, but that's fine with me. I really don't think my opponent can do much at this point. We'll just take the knockout on Raichu and, hey, let's see what we can do. So again, let's 3 Hypnotoxic Lasers gone, 2 Pikachu gone, Sableye gone. What's next? Does my opponent have anything left? Now another Sableye here could be annoying. Hypnotoxic Laser could be very annoying. But we could easily knock out a Sableye, and I mean, from there we just have to take 2 prizes, so it's all about wearing those things down. But wait a second, a Super Rod? What? Uh-oh. Now we do have to deal with more Pikachu and more Raichu, so that's not good news. Uh-oh. Alright, well, we were planning on dealing with just those 2 lines, but now we have been introduced to a Super Rod. So this might be troublesome if my opponent can get another Raichu into play. We do see the Hypnotoxic Laser, and Darkrai is just going to come out and try to Night Sphere and knock out that Litleo on the bench before it can evolve. I am poisoned, of course. But let's see, I do have pretty good cards right here. I've been holding on to that Dowsing Machine because I know I might need it for something like this. I can just Dowsing Machine for Skyla, get switch, and then retreat back into Pyroar and then continue attacking. And that was my opponent's 4th Hypnotoxic Laser. So we just have to deal with 1 more of those, and then we are pretty much home free, besides the Raichu, of course. We do still have to deal with that. But I'm just taking a look at what we've gone through so far, and it seems like just getting the switch here makes sense. Just prevent Pyroar from getting knocked out by the poison seems to be the best route. So let's Dowsing Machine for Skyla and go for one of those switch right here. And you can see we have all sorts of things left at our disposal. We have a Lysander left to pick something off at the end if need be. We have lasers left, we have Muscle Band, we have Blacksmith, and we should be fine with resources, just a matter of drawing them in time. Now what I'm doing here is putting pressure on this Darkrai. We're saying, alright, we're going to hit you for 80, and then if you want to continue to try to Night Spear that Litleo, well, you're just going to get knocked out by a Scorching Fang. You're going to be 10 short of taking that little guy down. So, unless you have a laser and then put me to sleep, and then I don't wake up, your Darkrai is going to get knocked out. And then I should be pretty much good for the rest of the way. I don't know, this is always very nerve-wracking to play from the Pyroar side, because you are basically banking on the fact that your opponent doesn't have a way to deal with it. If they do, well, you pretty much lose. So, I don't know, it's a very unique concept where you're trying to kind of lock down your opponent, but at any moment they could just bust out something that could get rid of your Pyroar, and then your whole strategy falls apart. It's just kind of, I guess that's kind of how all lock decks are, though. You know, like Trevenant Excelgor decks, so you could really have someone locked down, and then they just play a Lysander and break out of it, and everything crumbles. And it's just, does your opponent play the cards to actually deal with Pyroar? And we just see the Yveltal coming out in an Oblivion Wing for 0. We don't see another Pikachu coming into play quite yet. I did draw the Hypnotoxic Laser, so that was pretty good. Well, we can go ahead and knock out this Yveltal. I'm going to attach another Fire, I think just to the active, so I can Scorching Fang, discard the Fire, knock out the Yveltal, and then next turn, I'm just going to end to make sure my opponent doesn't get a bunch of cards, get another Raichu going, and then next turn, we just have an Ultra Ball for the Jirachi EX, Lysander out the Darkrai, and we should be able to Scorching Fang for the win. So, even though Charizard has done absolutely nothing, Pyroar and Ninetales have worked pretty well together. And they have been enough in this particular matchup to, it looks like, seal up the game. And that's very impressive that we've been able to kind of do that. And, I don't know. maybe there's something to this. Because here we go. I'm going to go ahead and Ultra Ball. Just discard 2 of those supporters and make sure my Lysander's in the deck. And it is. We're going to grab Jirachi EX. Stellar Guidance for the Lysander. And we can bring out that Darkrai who's already injured. And finish the game off with a Scorching Fang. With that Muscle Band, it's going to do 110 damage. And finish it off for the last 2 prizes. So, again, I'm really not sure how strong this concept is. But, hey, we managed to take down a top archetype right there. This Yveltal Raichu deck is becoming pretty popular. Just to counter other Yveltal decks. Raichu in general has become pretty popular. But we managed to deal with it and took it out. And, hey, maybe it works. I really, really don't know. Everything is kind of a big question mark right now, heading into U.S. Nationals in a few weeks. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will certainly have some more for you soon. I am Pooka from the Top Cut, and I'll see you guys next time.